This country is such an inspiration.
Her family's been out here for years.
You know, you'd never see this anywhere else.
Felt I was falling.
It's a secret I've been keeping for my whole life. This reaches to the depths of my soul.
Learn from these wild animals of the bush.
Well, that's my Australian story.
Hello, I'm Caroline Jones. Tonight's Australian story centres on an area of medicine which for a lot of people is still highly controversial. The practice of organ donation and transplantation might seem almost routine by now, but the actual process takes place in secrecy and anonymity. The medical profession, fearful of consequences, has always strongly discouraged donor families and transplant recipients from meeting each other. But our story looks at two families who challenged that convention with remarkable results. It all began 6 years ago when the Harrison family was confronted with its toughest choice over a boy called Ben.
I am terribly sad about the tragic thing which has happened to Ben. All the kids in 6C felt awful, and my friends and I all cried for a long time. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Harrison and Kyla, I am really sorry to hear the sad news about Ben. I hardly knew him, and yet I think I'll miss him. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Harrison and Kyla, I am so sorry about Ben. Everyone in the class is crying. No one can let go. I know that I can't let go.
I had realised as a father we'd lost our only son.
None of us can stand the pain, seeing someone so innocent like Ben. Smiles are wiped off faces, eyes are crying, hearts are beating.
And I could think of nothing worse than another family going through the same agony that we were going through.
Ben was very kind. Every day was fun with Ben. Never was Ben unkind.
Nothing more positive could have come from Ben's death.
And Elan and I just looked at one another and together said we would like to donate Ben's organs. There had to be something more than just 10 years, 10 short years of life with us.
Dear Ben's parents, he was my friend always. Enjoy your time in heaven. Your pal, Adrian Phil.
When Ben came into the world, I was just over the moon. And all I thought of at the time was the 10 fingers and toes and the like, and everything was okay. And right at that outset, within about 2 minutes, we knew that there was something wrong.
And that was when they realised that there was no connection to the stomach. And I suppose it was very lucky that they said there was something that could be fixed. They found out that he had a curvature in the spine due to an extra half vertebra sitting there. The only thing the doctor said he couldn't do would be contact sports.
After that 3 months, right through to when he had to have his last operation at 10, he was just like a normal little boy. He wasn't brilliant. He was mischievous. He was a right real pain sometimes.
Ben and I used to be like great mates. Instead of playing with Barbie dolls or anything like that, we'd go down the creek, go down the drain pipe and look for bats at the other end. You'd go bike riding everywhere. Nothing stopped Ben. You wouldn't have thought he had any problems at all.
Ben was a good soccer player and a good baseball player as well. I can remember him sort of being pretty full on, like just as much as we were.
He was energetic and keen, but he was always smiling. He was always happy, he's always positive.
I didn't realise that he had something wrong with his back until he had the cast on and he came to school.
We had so much complete faith in the hospital's system and the doctors that, to me at least, I just felt it was just another operation. We were explained as how severe it was, and we did ask the question, if we didn't go ahead, what was the consequences, and the response was that Ben would have been like the Hunchback of Notre Dame.
It never would have crossed our minds that there would be anything would go wrong in Ben's operation.
The last time I saw Ben alive, I have that etched in my brain. Ben was jumping up and down, waving, and Elaine drove up the driveway, and I can just remember waving goodbye. That was my last recollection, and it still haunts me a little bit. I came to the hospital and Elaine just looked at me and said, things aren't how they should be. She didn't need to say anything more. I could see it in her eyes. And then the physician just said, we've got some problems. And I think at that point, it started to sink in that Ben was in a life-threatening situation. He was deprived of blood to the brain for about 12 minutes. That commenced the roller coaster of the next 12 hours of emotions that we had to go through to verify that Ben was brain dead. And I can remember physically holding his hands, willing my energies, my soul, so to speak, into his body to try and make him come through this. But at the back of my mind, I knew as a father that I'd lost my only son. To be told clinically that your child is brain dead and all the visuals are there to say that they appear to be alive, it's very hard to come to grips. The hospital never held back. They involved us in the process of identifying or confirming that Ben was brain dead. And that made the final decision of offering Ben's organs for organ donation so much easier. It took away the doubt. It made me feel at least a little bit easier to handle that grief, knowing that out of the loss of Ben, we were able to help other families.
I remember that day that, you know, all the normal people who used to play soccer and ball games on the oval with him, the oval was completely empty. Everyone was just sitting around the side, just thinking and, you know, saying, oh, Ben did this. And I remember when Ben did that, and it was, yeah, the whole school was just in shock.
Nothing was meant to go wrong, and it did, and we're all just saying, you know, how could this happen, and it's not fair. And
it really hits you. You don't know how much you treasure that person until they're gone, and then it really hits you.
We all miss Ben and want to give Kyla a big hug when she comes back to school. We will miss you until then.
Love, Polly Mitchell.
The letters helped us, just made us feel like, oh, they care about what's happened to us, and it helped us go through it a lot easier. Hearing what other people had to say they're giving us their support that they didn't really need to. It's also Kyla and her family, they're just lost, you know, a whole chunk of who they are, and that's what's so sad about it all. Really makes you think about it.
At first, when Ben left us, I thought it was very personal. I did not realise how much of an impact one little boy could make on the community. From his family, friends, classmates, teachers and parents who knew him so long, mate, we will all miss you dearly. I've always thought, once having donated Ben's organs, not so much where had they gone, it was more how was that person now living.
Listen to the word of God, listen to the word of God.
I was coming off of 2.5 years of kidney dialysis, and I was progressively just getting worse.
Deep in your heart.
Once they said to me, would you like to go on the transplant program, on the list, the famous list? I was always optimistic. I'd been waiting for 2.5 years. It was around 2:30 in the afternoon, and the phone went. Yes, this is the registrar, and I think he said, are you sitting down? Are you comfortable? I said, yes. We'd like you to come in this afternoon for a transplant. Well, I was gobsmacked. That was certainly a big turning point in my life. When I woke up, one of my first conscious thoughts was that, after being told it has happened, I actually do have the kidney, and the kidney is working, and therefore I could start then to think about what was going to happen from there on in.
Come on. There's a good girl.
It meant that when I woke up in the morning that I could go for those walks that I didn't have the energy to do before, hopefully being able to get a job. It meant that I had the capacity to be able to do that, be able to sit down and eat just about anything, to be able to even have a drink. And most importantly,
I pray.
I really do enjoy the singing. God willing, everything came back. One was able to continue with that because it had been difficult to sing before.
And your lips close to mine.
I've got to say, though, my main concern, to be crude about it, was that it was my body that had been saved. It was me that had been saved from any more problems. Gradually, you get the realisation that the kidney didn't just get manufactured, the kidney came from somewhere. And that's the bit that's very salutary, when that realisation comes and hits you, that it came from someone else. And it meant that someone basically had to die before you could continue your life. And I just felt I needed to have some sort of completion. Yes, I'd received a kidney, but I really was very keen to find out where the kidney had come from, in fact, who had donated it. All I knew was that it had come from a 10-year-old child.
On reflection regarding our recipients, I have always been adamant I wanted to meet them. I didn't want to meet them because I wanted to see a part of Ben was living on in our recipients, but I wanted to meet them personally so I could see the positive benefit of our decision-making. I always felt that it was almost like the last chapter of the whole process was to be able to go and meet with our recipients. And I know that the current situation with the legally is that recipients and donors are not allowed to meet. But at the back of my mind, it has always been a wish that that could be achieved.
I was extremely grateful, I mean, unbelievably so. And I, of course, wanted to be able to write direct to the donor family. But for all good reasons, the Red Cross suggested that if I were to write a letter, essentially an anonymous letter, I was able to use my first name, but obviously no addresses, to the donor family. They would pass it on.
Our next speaker is Graham Harrison.
I've been asked to give a donor's perspective of the medical procedure that I went through. Within about a year after Ben's passing, I felt that what we had done had helped us, and we had begun to meet other recipients. I felt that there was a message from the donor side.
So, Graham, the decisions to be made in organ donation, do you think they're well understood by parents in general?
I think that parents very rarely understand organ donation at that time. I know that when we lost Ben, I was told, Graham, do you realise that if you go onto the radio that you could well be identified by a recipient? And I said, yes, I was fully aware of that, and that I hoped that that would eventuate. Received a kidney, or Ben's kidneys, and a young girl down in Melbourne who received Ben's heart and lungs.
It was the tail end of a report or an interview with a fellow who was talking about his 10-year-old son who had died in unfortunate circumstances and whose organs, kidney and heart, had been donated, and in particular that the kidney had gone to a middle-aged gentleman. Immediately, eyes went wide open, and I listened, and I was waiting for them to, yes, and next, name. I think they may well have mentioned the name of Ben being there. So there we are. We had a 10-year-old child, and we had Ben.
The Australian medical magazine asked us to do an interview on an article on Who Owns Your Body.
Margaret, my wife, was in a doctor's waiting room and was reading through this particular medical journal, and somehow her eyes alighted on this particular segment.
I quoted the letter that I received from David. David's wife happened to be flicking through that same magazine, and the story jumped out, read David's article, and our names, full names, were at the bottom of that. Immediately they could put two and two together.
So we started to look for the Harrisons, and I think we were up to about 45 or 50. And Margaret got through, and then I heard her yelling, I found him! And I'm thinking to myself, what does that mean? And she'd actually made contact. My instinctive reaction was to be very guarded. Look, I believe I have received your son's kidney, but if you don't want to progress this any further, I'll fully understand and I'll withdraw straight away. Oh, no, we're more than happy. We agreed then to set up a meeting.
Every emotion that you could possibly feel was going through my body: anticipation, excitement of finally meeting.
I couldn't wait. I couldn't sleep that night. The memorable day is one that we can't really forget now, being the 29th of February.
It was really spine-tingling stuff for me that it was actually happening, that I was able to shake the hand of Ben's recipient, to see firsthand what we'd done.
We went and had what was to be a very emotional lunch. We didn't eat anything. I was finding out more about him. He wanted to find out more about me. And then it culminated in both of us really bursting into tears of joy, I suppose, and relief to some extent from my point of view that I'd actually found what I was looking for.
It was just raw emotion. And it's something that particular point in time I'll carry around with me for the rest of my life. What have we got here?
Chicken with red wine and tomato.
Oh, must be Wednesday.
I don't drink though. When I first met David, he and his wife came here for a dinner one night. It was strange to think that we're actually meeting someone that had received one of Ben's organs. There may have been the fears on the other side that they thought that we might say, hey, this is some part of Ben's body, and hug us like we're hugging part of his body.
My fears probably of the meeting would be that Graham and indeed Elaine might see my existence as a continuation of Ben, that the very fact that part of Ben was living on in me would somehow put the onus on me to give protection to his memory in that respect, and that they might cling to that as being a solid reminder of their son.
G'day, Dave. Look as ugly as ever, don't you?
Yeah, I can't help it, mate.
Been a long time.
It hasn't worked out that way, thank goodness, for all concerned.
You don't really think, oh, my brother's organs are in someone else. You think, oh, they're lucky enough to have a second chance. You've still got Ben, and even though his organs are taken out, it's not like you're taking... You are taking a part of him, but you're not taking him. You're just taking vital organs that aren't of use to him anymore and can help other people.
Oh, here we go. Ripper. Now, there are people that have actually lost their arms for doing things like that for my barbecues.
The fact that this chemistry, if you like, between the Harrisons and myself and Margaret worked for us doesn't, of course, mean that it will work for everyone.
How long have you been driving for?
Oh, well, since I was 17.
17.
Oh, 10 years?
Yeah.
And she's got a 17-year-old. There is concern by the medical fraternity in the two parties meeting that a donor family could be overbearing and possessive of the recipient, that the recipient family could be so overwhelmingly thankful that they keep on dredging up the grief with the donor family of having lost a loved one. But for us, it's none of those. I think it's been fantastic. Have never regretted the day that we have met.
It's really exciting to see that the donation of Ben's organs has done a great improvement to his life and his health.
Anis angelicus, fit panis hominum.
When you're on dialysis, you can't do an awful lot of travelling, and we're invited to go to Rome to sing for the beatification of Edmund Rice. That was presided over by the Holy Father. It was a wonderful honour to be able to go there and be the principal cantor in St. Peter's Basilica. I was fully fit. I'd been transplanted and was rued with good health. My singing has also led me on one of these many things that Graham gets me involved in.
I was involved in the World Transplant Games, and it was a marvellous feeling to be standing on the Opera House steps in front of 10,000 people.
And at the end of that, he actually introduced me, informing the audience that I was in fact the recipient of his son's kidney. And there was a stunned silence. I was wondering whether I'd done something or wasn't perhaps wearing the right clothing, or perhaps I left my pants at home or something, until I realised that they were stunned because they'd just been told that I knew, or that rather I knew who the donor was for the kidney that I had. And then I realised that a lot of the people out there were in fact recipients, and they didn't know. And it was only then after that the silence was broken by this clapping, this sort of ovation. there was hardly a dry eye in the house. You know, it was wonderful.
Cox, and he said that the donor families are going to be treated the same as the recipient athletes, and we can get into the fundraising as well. Oh, yeah. And
there is a saying that don't take your organs to heaven. Heaven knows we need them here. Graham leaves that on his car. It's a wonder he doesn't wear it on his forehead, because he truly, truly is committed to that saying, and he lives it every day of his life, and so does Elaine.
Waves put me on the spot. There's an underlying driving force for me to be so proactive with organ donation and awareness, and it's what's helped me deal with my grief in getting out there and spreading the word, participating, telling the message. Talk to your families about it and think about organ donation. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think that's been heaps important today. Like, it's been able to say Ben's gone and I've been able to continue on. He's been able to interact and help people who've gone through the same thing. He's been able to talk to them about how it's affected him.
It's the end of a sad story, but it's like an ongoing story, being able to hear about people doing better. And when you see some of the transplant recipients, you just think they're such healthy people. It's really helped us move on. It's been something that we can look forward to.
I think various people deal with death in different ways. And I think Graham is still sensitive, obviously, to the death of his son. He's not, however, resurrecting his son through the work that he's doing. He's giving Ben's death a meaning, and therefore giving something back to society and back to the memory of Ben.